And here we are on the 29th at the end of our total solar day, closing out our fourth week in August. It's been quite an interesting month. The thermal management aspect of it has been very interesting, very eye-opening as far as how much power the AC consumes, and it was really also interesting and beneficial to have this kind of a verification with Tomas's system as well, and being able to watch his system basically mimic ours. I mean, he's got a bit more of a benefit because it's a little bit cooler in the Bay Area, closer to the water where he is, about 10 degrees on average warmer here than it is there. But it was really interesting to see both homes basically go through the same thing, struggle on the same days. And that led to some off again, on again driving on the car. At some point, we just wound up with so little freeboard over and above what was used by the AC system that driving was just not going to happen, driving on sunlight, that is. And so we are charging the car again on sunlight today. This week we did quite a bit of out-of-town driving, as we'll see when we do the week closeout. And so the result of that was that we had to do a considerable amount of our driving this past week on supercharger. I was out of town, they happened to be convenient, so rather than charging at the studio, I was charging in the superchargers. So at any rate, let's go ahead and get back to the studio and have a look at the numbers for this last week in August. Well, welcome back to the studio for our recap for the fourth week in August. Now I'm going to change up the format here just a little bit. Usually I review the fourth week and then I take those last couple of days to formulate my thoughts and then produce the monthly closeout that then includes those final days. But because this month's closeout video is going to be a little different, I'm going to go ahead and cover the remaining days of August in this week's review. And so let's get to that. Start off where we left off on August the 21st. And bring that up. And we've got some cloudy weather, decent production, and that kept the day cool. And so then that led to a little bit of a false sense of security in that, that kind of 10 to 15-ish kilowatt hour overage range there. We peaked out with the charge in the system and wound up sending some power to the grid. Basically, this shows what many of you already know now, and that is that the best way to judge the health of how the system's doing is by how much you put to the car, and then by looking at how much the system has managed to bank from the previous day. So in other words, how much excess did you produce over what you used in any given previous total solar day. And so that's basically, we're showing that increase there. And then the notes, and we're going to be brief here with the notes because this is where we left off last week, so I'm just kind of including it here for continuity and to give us a little idea of the context to start off the rest of the week here for just a second. Okay, so now on the 22nd, here you can see first off that we've included our total supercharge miles, and obvious intention there being to get back on track and start driving on sunlight again. But the slight hitch in that obviously is our power production. And so remember what we'd stated previously, that we produced that 42 or 49.2 kilowatt hours, but the home alone took 48.8 kilowatt hours to run for the day. So most of that obviously is in AC. and we're not going to be driving anywhere on 0.4 kilowatt hours. But since we were hopeful that the temperatures would ease off, we wound up putting 20 kilowatt hours of reserve into the car. Everything else is pretty much kind of self-explanatory. I'll let you look at that for just a second here. And so then we have the notes. And so then just that, we depleted the car to the amount of charge that it had on it before we started supercharging. That's the best way to keep the numbers clean and honest, to still make an attempt at driving on sunlight to get some additional numbers as we enter this transitional period going into winter. And then the 23rd, we see a return to the supercharging icon. I had to make a round trip to the Bay Area, and there simply isn't enough freeboard with the AC use to be able to reliably make it. So I had to put 10 kilowatt hours that I thought I could spare into the car, and then see at what point I had to start supercharging. And so then on the return, wound up putting 34 kilowatt hours, so that would give us that even 100 miles or so to the car. And the notes, again, 10 kilowatts to the vehicle, opening and closing miles for the day. I've included those here because they included mixed driving on both supercharging and sunlight, so that keeps us honest there. Let's look at that for a second. And then the 24th, another day of mixed driving. These days make it tough to decide whether I should be pressing on driving on sunlight, since it's not really possible to bank power in both the car and at home at the same time. And so if the change in weather doesn't make it so that I can manage both here, pretty soon I'll likely stop trying to put sunlight miles into the car and then just focus again on trying to get through the winter. But see here, pretty decent production, 49.1 kilowatt hours. Total use of the home though was 46. Combined use of 61.1 kilowatt hours, and then you can see that reflected in the total solar day percentage kind of sinking down a little bit. And then the notes, 40 kilowatt hours from supercharging, 15 from the system. Gave the car a bump to be able to make it out and back to the Bay Area. And then on the 25th, the heat starting to come up, and that lowered production slightly down to 48.2 kilowatt hours of production. And again, the AC is elevated, and that brought the home usage up to that 44.3 kilowatt hours. And the combination of that, only wound up being able to put 8 kilowatt hours to the car. And so then the idea there would be that 31% in the system would be enough to be able to make it to morning. And so then you can see that we started the day at 14%, but it still shows that downward trend from the previous day where we started. And here's the notes. Basically that. Also showing how the car was returned to charging off of sunlight, but depleting it to the same number of miles that it had when the supercharging was started. And so then again, that keeps those numbers clean. And so then on the 26th, again, hot. Had several out-of-town errands that required yet more supercharging. Started the day there, you can see at 4% on a day that we already know is going to be a scorcher, and that's going to be a problem. And so then overall we produced 47.8 kilowatt hours, but then we turned around and consumed 46.3. So no driving then. And so the notes, just that again, 105 degrees Fahrenheit, and the concern then that if we're only at 25% at total solar day, even with no vehicle charging, that we might not make it until morning. And so and a little bit of a nail biter. And so then on the 27th, we barely made it. Obviously, with a repeat of the previous day, the same thing had to take place. There's no charging to the car. All the focus will be just on trying to make it through the morning with the elevated AC. And so now, though, it's important to note that I'm not monkeying around again with the AC here. What you're seeing is both the car and the AC system in direct competition with one another for the resources. The only allowance I make is that I do open the windows in the evening when the temperatures and the breeze benefit. I'm not going to manipulate the AC to try and paint a more rosy picture of the consumption, but I'm not going to be an idiot about it either. So, and the notes, as shown here in the notes, again, light breeze, bit of scattered cloud cover, but it was still 105 degrees. The breeze did kick up in the evening though, and because of that we were able to kick off the AC early. And then on the 28th, once again we made it to morning by the skin of our teeth. Production is slightly reduced because of the cloud cover today, but that also means that the usage for the day went right back to that 30 kilowatt hour mark that we usually see. And the end result of that was that we ended the total solar day at 34%, and I had an evening that was cooler temperatures. And so then the notes, and as the notes say, we're running on the last of our supercharger miles, nothing to put on the vehicle. And like I said earlier about the cooler weather on the 29th, we see a repeat of that cool weather. Started our day at 21%, having only used 13% overnight. That's a decent production there, 53.5 kilowatt hours with home usage of only 36.3 kilowatt hours, and that allowed us to put some charge to the car. And so then it might also be interesting, what we're going to do here is we're going to pull up the graph for the previous 2 days, the 28th and the 29th. And here you go. That's a good illustration of the effect of the cloud cover on production on the 28th. And then that resulted in those cooler overnight temperatures. You can see the 4 spikes on the 28th, and that represents the AC, with the smaller block that occurs around midnight and again at 6 in the morning. That's the air circulating fans coming on. And then as that goes over to the 29th, you see the AC come on around 3 p.m. and then again at 5 p.m. just before the car begins its charge. And then you can see it tapering off towards midnight. And so then we'll look at the notes for the 29th. Like the notes say, and like the graph shows, the cooler overall temperatures in the evening brought the usage down. And then that brings us to the 30th. And no problem making it to morning, again because of that low usage in the evening. We had 14% when we started off. The car was needed, and so we had to put 10 kilowatt hours to the vehicle by drawing the charge down in the morning so that I could use the vehicle that day. And that put us at 45% at the end of total solar day. And this could have allowed us to put a little bit more to the vehicle, but with the temperature slightly on the rise, instead of the decline, it was decided to go ahead and leave it there for safety. And then the notes, just that, showing the system recovery from those cooler temperatures. Let's look at that for a second. And then here we have the 31st, slightly higher than average driving for the previous 2 days. And so then it was decided to put another 20 kilowatt hours to the vehicle to cover that usage and keep the car up to a usable percentage. decent production for the day, but as you can see, it was eaten up by the increased AC use from the home, 56 kilowatt hours even before vehicle charging, and that ate into the reserves slightly, ending the day at 31% from that high of the 60% charge. That was again due to the vehicle charging. And so in the notes, let's look at that for a second there. And then that brings us to a close for August. Now, like I said, I'm going to change the closeout video for August a little bit. I'm going to do something a little new with our closeout and try to show a little bit more graphic representation of the month. I'm still going to do our format of 31 days and 32 minutes, and then we'll have a little closer at the end. But I thought it might be interesting for folks to get an idea of what the graphical representation is for a month. It's a little more time consuming to do it that way, but it is something that I've been doing for the past months as well, kind of gearing up for our massive closeout that we're going to be doing at the end of the year, where we start to crunch all of our data. And we'll probably do, I'm thinking probably 3 or 4 videos closing out the year as we go over the various things that we've learned. And so one of the things that we're going to be doing is a very intensive examination of how much power we drew from the grid and when we drew it. And then take a look at how much power we produced, when we produced it. Try and take a good holistic look, and the charts will be a really good way to be able to do that. And I noticed that in the recent Tesla app, one of the things that Tesla did do was they included now a way that you could step all the way back with the daily graphs and look at any day that was recorded in the system. Well done, Tesla. Well done. I'd like them to include a way to search for those days, to pull up any individual day. Someone had mentioned that there might be a way to do that on Tesla's website. I'll research that and also get back to you. But that's a very welcome tool that that Tesla put on. So I was very glad to see that. But with that, we'll go ahead and close out, and as always, we are very much content driven by our subscriber comments. So if there's any questions that you have from anything that you've seen this month, or anything that you might like to see as part of a special video, please chime in the comments. And good luck with your own systems, and we'll see you again soon.